Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Fix Computers. I've got a Toshiba laptop here. This is it's a C55-C, and we've got no power on this guy. So I've already taken the back and some screws off of this because I wanted to remove the hard drive to back up the customer data. But I'll show you what we've got so far. So I've taken out all these screws on the bottom, and if we remove this bottom cover, we get access to the motherboard. And what we've got is the laptop will actually run until the battery runs flat. However, we can't charge it. And I'll show you what happens when we try. If I plug a charger in here, we get no light on the front of the laptop, so no light up here. And if I turn on my multimeter, just put that somewhere in sight, where it's not catching the glare from the light. And if we check the positive and negative of the DC jack, you can see that the bar graph at the bottom of my multimeter is jumping. So that means we've got some kind of oscillation going on there. And what that means is that there's a short circuit in the laptop that is causing the charger to cut in and out, because the charger will go up to its maximum output, then cut off again, and then keep going back and forth like that. So this is going to be a short circuit somewhere in the laptop, most likely near the actual DC input area over here. It's probably going to be actually at the input or around the battery charger or some other kind of primary power system in the laptop. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the motherboard out of the laptop so we can check both sides of it, and we'll just start doing some basic sanity checks for obviously shorted components, that kind of thing. And we'll see if we can get lucky here. I'm just feeling around with my finger, see if anything has been warming up while I've had it plugged in. And, you know, there is some warmth around this area. So, you know, there's been power inside the laptop, but it's hard to tell from this point where the problem might be. So let's go motherboard out first, and then we'll continue. Well, there's your problem. It's the same guy as the last time we saw this issue. Folks in the audience who watch my content on a regular basis, what do you see here? That looks like a reverse voltage diode, and it's probably in a dead short. Weird that this is a really uncommon issue, yet it's the second time in a row I've seen it. Continuity mode. Yeah, and the other direction. Yeah. So this is a reverse polarity protection diode. And the idea is that if the charger is connected the wrong way round somehow, so you've got 19.5 volts on the 0 and you've got 0 on the 19.5 volts, what will happen is that this guy is connected in reverse across the input. So if the input itself is reversed, it will go straight through that diode and back into the charger, as opposed to going the wrong way through the rest of the laptop. So this guy is failed short because our charger is connected the correct way around, and that's conducting. So first of all, we're going to take that guy off of the board. So let's get the hot air station warmed up, and we'll take that guy off the board, and then we'll have to have a look and see if we can find a replacement for him. So I've got my hot air station heating up the area now, and just so we don't do any thermal damage, I'm just going to blow around the area and just warm everything up a little bit first, just so we don't thermally shock anything. Whoops, move that out of the way. This plastic is supposed to be liquid damage protection. Alright, let's get that guy off the board. Hopefully he's not welded himself onto the board. Bloody hell. Heckin' plastic. Oh, God, that frightened the life out of me. I'll just pin this back with something. Good grief. Okay. Let's try that again. This positive side doesn't want to flow. Come on, dude. This side's already molten. That side, though, it doesn't want to go. There it goes. Come on, mate. Don't make me rip you off. There it is. I'll just leave that all to cool down. And then what we'll do, we'll plug it in, and we should find that this thing now works. And then we just got to decide if we can replace that or not. Okay, let's drop this thing back in the case. We could just plug it in situ, but sometimes it's easier to put it back in the chassis just so everything lines up. Right, I've plugged in half the cables, that's close enough. Let's plug this thing in. Okay, and I just saw a light come on at the front. There's our charge light. And have I got enough to turn this thing on? I think I do. Let's get the keyboard connected, and we can probably just fire it up and just get a picture on the screen. Okay, we have power, and there was briefly a picture on the screen. There we go. No bootable device because the hard drive's not connected. Please restart system. Good. Let's just drop that into BIOS just so we can leave it turned on for a bit and just make sure it doesn't cut out or do anything funky. There we go. Cool. Right, I'm just going to leave it like that for a bit and just make sure that nothing blows up. And in the meantime, I'm going to have a look around, see if I've got anything to replace this diode with. I mean, technically, it's not really necessary to replace it, because really you've got to do something pretty funky to reverse volt these things. But it would be nice to replace it if we can. So I'm going to clean this thing up and see if I can get any kind of identification on its rating. Otherwise, I might just take a guess, because the last time I saw this, I took a guess, and that laptop seems to be doing just fine these days. So, okay, right, that's been on for a while, and that seems to be running just fine, so we'll turn it off. I've tracked down another diode for this motherboard, but I'm not sure if it's going to fit or not. It's actually from the same donor board that I used for the last laptop where I had this issue. Unlike this laptop, the diodes we were using on the last one were heckin' chonkers, but that's okay. Overrated is fine, underrated is a problem. What all these diodes need to do is just be rated high enough to tolerate 19.5 volts working against them. So they just need to be, you know, like 32 volt rated. And as long as you're meeting that spec, you'll be fine. So let's just see if it'll fit in place, because I'm not sure how much clearance we've got underneath this board. And as I say, this bit of a chunker diode might not fit. So on the right hand side is the blown diode that we took off the board, and on the left is a replacement one. And the ratings are similar, but as you can see, the one on the left is much taller package. So as I say, it's going to be a little bit tricky to get that guy on, but I think it should be okay. I think we'll get away with that, so I'm going to give it a whirl. And as I say, in terms of rating, the spec doesn't really matter. All it's got to do is refuse the 19.5 volts going the correct direction, and then conduct 19.5 volts going the wrong direction. That's all it has to do in life. I'm not quite sure why modern laptops have suddenly gained a fetish for these reverse current diodes, because on all the old boards that I look at, they're not there. I went through a lot of the old laptop motherboards that I've got lying around just to see if they have reverse voltage on them, and they don't. I think they just do it all in. I think they just handle all of that in the inrush limiter. But for some reason or other, a lot of these new laptops, they're just sticking in reverse voltage diodes. No idea why. And they seem to be causing more problems than they solve. that seems to be the case anyway. Right, let me see. I'm going to be good and get my soldering iron and just clean up those pads before we put the new one on, just so there's a nice solid connection there. So let's find... Oh, I'll use my poor man's soldering iron today, actually. We really don't need the TS100 for this. We need flux, though. You always need flux. One pawl of flux, as the meme goes. Go. Okay, right, so the line on a diode is negative, so that's going to go that way round. And I'm going to see if I can soldering iron hero this guy into place. So we'll put a blob of solder on one pad and get that into place. And then flow the other side. There we go. Right, that guy's sticking up quite a lot. I'm not sure if I'm going to get away with this guy. So we'll fit this back into the motherboard and we'll just see if that's sticking up too much to fit back in the case. Because, yeah, if that doesn't clear the bottom of the case, then that's no bueno. Which will be a bit of a shame. I suppose I should probably tidy that up a bit as well, actually. Let's give that a squirt of alcohol and toothbrush the excess off. Gets rid of most of the flux residue. Right, yeah, that's sticking up a little bit, but we've got the plastic film over the top of it, so it's not going to short out against the case or anything. And even if it was touching the back of the case, that is the top of the diode itself is not conductive. It's only the pins on the sides. So between that lot, I think we're going to be absolutely fine here. I'm going to give that a whirl, and I think it'll be completely fine. Yeah, we've got AC lights on the front of the laptop. This is fine. Good. Cool, I'm going to leave that guy there. As I mentioned, I don't really think these things need reverse diode protection, and if the state of the diodes that are going into them is anything to be judged by, it looks like they are actually doing more harm than good by putting in the reverse diode protection. However, that's what they designed it with, and I'm sure the people who designed this laptop know a lot more about electronics engineering than I do, so I'll take their word for it. I will merely replace it with another diode. I wonder if they're just using really poor quality diodes in these things that are rated for like 20 volts or 25 volts. Because remember that because they're using just rectifier diodes in these things, that diode is just sitting there with a reverse bias against it all the time. And if it's only rated for like, I don't know, 25 volts or something, and it's got 19.5 going against it all the time, eventually it's going to break down. And I reckon that's what's going on in these laptops. The one I've put in there is a 32 volter, so, you know, it should be well in excess of what's required. But yeah, I'm kind of interested to see if this is an emerging issue that's actually going to become worse. This isn't a new laptop by any means, but then a lot of these modern style laptops, the cheap low power laptops, they're all reaching midlife cycle now, and this is the kind of time where these problems start coming to light. Man, this thing's an i5 as well. Just because you got an i5 badge on it doesn't mean it's a good laptop. Such a shame. Oh well, let's plug that in. And we should actually get a boot up from it this time. And Now we're getting a Windows boot as well, so we've got the Windows spinner on it. I'm not going to wait for that. It's got a hard drive in it. So, right, thank you very much for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time. Easy one today. Bye.